Hi guys, I'm EVM and welcome back. Now, we used to say that when it comes to owning a full electric vehicle, they suit most people most of the time. So there's always a long journey or something which is less convenient, but for the most part, they would suit the vast majority of people's driving patterns. Obviously, everyone's different, there's exceptions to every rule. Now, though, it's more of a case of they suit some people most of the time. The amount of people that would perfectly suit an electric car is diminishing. It's a smaller group of people that it would suit than ever before, when in reality it should be going the other way, especially given the political will and where everybody seems to want the industry to go in terms of going full electric. And I've no problems with ambitious targets. No one tells their children to aim for a C, you always aim for the top, and if you miss it, then, well, you've tried, haven't you? So I don't mind the 2035 ban coming up. Everyone needs something to aim for, but ultimately, I fear that even that's going to be missed or at least delayed for reasons that some can be changed and some can't be changed. But I think it's correct to say that now, as we're into 2023, it's the hardest it ever has been to recommend somebody gets a full electric car. Now, don't get me wrong, there are millions of people out there that would still suit an EV. The main division that seems to cause the biggest problems isn't cost, although we'll come back to that, it's whether or not you can charge at home. See, if you can charge at home, forget cost of the car for a second, but if you can charge at home, you will have a good customer experience, if you like, of owning an electric car. It will be, for the vast majority of people, more convenient than even a petrol or diesel car, because like a mobile phone, you get home, you plug it in, and you wake up, it's full. However, if you can't charge at home, things are very, very different. You have to rely on the public charging network. And that's where it's getting harder and harder and more difficult to say to people, if you can't charge at home, I think you'll be all right. Because ultimately, the charge network over the last 7.5 years of my personal experience of using them, it's hardest now to access a charger than it ever has been. And that is because, for me, what chargers have done have got more numerous, they've got faster, we've got more sites, so the charging networks are getting bigger and better. That's certain. But the amount of cars that are getting sold far outstrips the amount of chargers that are getting installed. Unfortunately, they can't be installed quick enough, and only the fact that they're struggling to manufacture EVs, which at the moment still have a long lead time on them, it's keeping it in some sort of check. So effectively, what we're getting is that most of the public charge points I come across, on the assumption they work, of course, because reliability is still an issue, there's usually some sort of queue. And that's because obviously you've got lots more people accessing less chargers, proportionally anyway. Now we've got chargers that are in near constant use, and of course maintenance means that they're going to fail a lot quicker than when they're not in any use at all as they used to be. So essentially, heavy use and lots of people, not using them properly, has meant that it's very difficult to get onto the charging network. And if you rely on it because you can't charge at home, then ultimately you're just in for a potential world of pain. There are, of course, many caveats and exceptions to what I've just said. There are parts of the country that have acceptable charging solutions for people that don't charge at home. But I would say, as a broad statement, which isn't always the best thing to do, but as a broad statement, the charging network in the UK isn't good enough for those that cannot charge when they're at home. Again, I see a lot of charging hubs going in, a lot of flagship sort of sites, which is great. We need them. But apart from them being just dotted around, they're kind of geared more towards long journeys carrying on. So GridServe have done a couple of their sites and they're very, very good. But unless you're doing a long journey, happen to be passing one, they're not really suited for you. They're not in the middle of a town centre, they're not in the middle of a town or something like that you could just pop into the shops and then leave your car charging at. They're designed for onward travel. And we need both, but for me, the destination side of the charging network is massively lacking. You don't need to use a rapid charger if you can't charge at home. You want to be able to charge at your workplace, at the supermarket you visit, at the shops or the council car park. So we're on a diminishing amount of numbers. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's still millions of people that could easily own one. I think it's roughly, depending on what study you read, 50%-ish of UK housing stock does have capability of charging at home. So you've got millions of people that could easily own one, millions that can't, but there's still a lot more out there. There's still a lot more growth for the EV sector to go into, but then of course cost comes into it. A lot of this isn't really down to EVs specifically. I mean, they've always had, up to now anyway, a premium over their petrol equivalents. An e-Golf was more than a petrol Golf. But because of everything that's going on in the world right now, the cost of living, petrol cars have gone up a lot, electric cars have gone up a lot, and they just seem less attainable. Well, they are, because the more expensive something gets, the less people can buy one. Apart from a few MGs, which is why people like them so much, and maybe the Fiat 500 Mini and a couple of other small electric cars, the vast majority on the market at the moment, the new EVs, are over £30,000. That's like the starting price, which is a lot of money, especially during the cost of living crisis. And of course, electricity has gone up substantially along with petrol and diesel, but there used to be certain incentives, certain pros and cons of owning an EV. And one of the pros was fuel was very cheap. If you charge at home on the right tariff, it still is. But on the public network, it's about the same as petrol or diesel is. It fluctuates, which is why I'm being kind of generic. Sometimes one's cheaper than the other, but it used to be a case of, all right, I accept, for me personally anyway, I accept it's going to be less convenient doing a long journey in my 30 kilowatt hour Leaf or even the 24 Leaf, because it's so cheap to do it in. I'm saving money, I'm happy to spend longer driving. That has effectively gone now in terms of doing long journeys and saving money. So again, diminishing numbers. Yeah, I want to know what you think really and what we can do, because I'm not stating in this video, let's get rid of EVs, they're a waste of time. A lot of people think that the big EV con, they're not going anywhere. If you think that they're going to stop selling them because they don't work, you're deluded. They're only going to get more and more common, but people need to make it better for themselves, as well as just relying on a government or a council that really isn't doing very good at all. So what can we do to help this out? Because to come in, let's try and make a difference ourselves rather than just complain behind a keyboard. I've visited my MP several times over the last few years to try and put my point forward with various things I won't bore you with in this video. I've helped my local council get 2 rapid chargers installed in Skipton. If you ever visit Skipton and use the Osprey chargers, without tooting my own horn too much, that is pretty much all down to myself. I contacted the local councillor who was very much in favour of them and got them pushed forward because it was a no-brainer. They were no cost to the council pretty much. So why wouldn't any council say no to that? But it still took them 2 years to get free chargers installed, rapid chargers. It's a cracker's place that we're in, but at least there's something we can do. Contact your MP, contact your local councillor. That's what they're there for. Don't just sit back and moan, do something about it. Not everyone's got the time, not everyone's got the interest that I have, but all you need to do is send an email off to your MP or your councillor saying, this isn't good enough, this charger's not worked for months, or why is this council car park not getting any chargers, etc, etc. So there are things that we can all do. It's not just a case of the government, the council aren't doing X, Y and Z. There are private companies as well that we need to badger. The whipping boy of previous times was Electricity, of course, because they were the worst in terms of reliability. Gridserver bought them, much better, and that's kind of solved that problem. Although not perfect, they are, again, a lot better. But there are still several charge networks out there that are still doing their old tricks and are immensely unreliable. I'm sure you know the main culprit I'm talking about. And all we can do, again, is keep on battering them with, well, not so much complaints, but I guess complaints that this isn't working, it hasn't been working for weeks or months. What's going on? Kick up a stink. The entire kind of social EV networky community eventually jumped on the let's have a go at Electricity bandwagon because they have the only chargers at service areas. and then even the government started looking into it. By which point they obviously thought, let's get out of here, we're not doing a very good job, and they sold it on. That's the sort of pressure we now need to put on the other failing networks, because if all the networks were like some of the good ones, and I'm mentioning no names, pros or cons, then we would have a much better time of it. I'm sick of turning up at chargers where one's failed and one's got a queue. Things always fail. I work in IT, it's a fact of life, but it shouldn't take 2 months to fix something. Someone somewhere, whether it's the person paying the bills, the person at the council that's okaying something, or the person at the charge network, someone's not doing their job properly if it's taking 2 months to repair something. It's infuriating, and it's basically making it much, much harder for people to want to get an EV, and especially so if you cannot get a home charger and then have to rely on that public charging network. That's essentially what I'm saying. It's the hardest time it's ever been. It doesn't mean it's the end of the world, but let's all do our bit. Let's contact the people, MPs, councillors, charge networks. In fact, in the comments section, if you know of a specific charger, and try and put the location, maybe a link to ZapMap or wherever, say this charger near me hasn't worked for, let's say, anything over a month. Anyway, this short video has gone on for a lot longer than I thought. So thanks for watching. I'll come off now. I'll see you soon. Please like, subscribe, all that sort of rubbish, and bye.